Will Gavin and Master Tess Fassian.
And a squad of big-name contributors.
The S Word
from talkSPORT.
Yeah, I never read what they've written. Always had been. Oh, sorry, we live. You're here with the S Word, sponsored by Cowlin. I'm Will Gavin, and I'm
the
joined...
least attractive man in here.
Excuse me? How is that the start of the show? Unbelievable. I'm Will Gavin, and as you can see, Master Tess Fatsian not here live from the US, but I do have the brilliant Max Scott alongside me.
How are you, mate?
I'm well, brother. I'm well. I'm delighted to finally be doing a show with you. I've watched you do wonderful work over this World Cup, and I find myself...
Right?
Arguing with you regularly on WhatsApp and DMs and everything else.
Yeah,
so.
you come for me when I don't ask for it.
Yeah.
You really hold me to account.
It's because I think
it's because you're my boss, really.
It's because I respect you.
Okay.
That's why.
Yeah.
Don't tell them I'm your boss on air.
Well, it's
like
true.
Your boss today.
It's true, and I want a pay rise.
Right. Now I'm going to come for you. We've got a great show coming up for you today. We've got the great Nate Bucati joining us. We'll talk about what the impact of this World Cup has been in America in general. Of course, we'll build up to those two huge semi-finals. Tomorrow, France, Spain. Wednesday, England, Argentina. For me, and I know Max agrees, the greatest rivalry in international football. Yeah, we like to play and beat the Germans, but there's something special about those games with Argentina. We're going to talk 64-team World Cup. Has Gianni Infantino gone mad? Or actually, is the evidence of this tournament been that it could work? Do I want to... No, I can't be nice to Gianni Infantino. It's not happening. It's not happening. Plus, Christina Unkel joins us. We've got Ben Jacobs with the latest transfer news. We'll talk Tottenham, we'll talk Man United. All of that coming up here on the S Word, sponsored by Cowlin. I'm Will Gavin, and it's all me. Correct.
That's more like it.
Max, how are you, buddy?
I'm flying, mate. I mean, I have existed on, I would say, and I mean, I don't wear those washes because I know that I'll just hyper-focus on my bio age getting older and older. But I would say I'm functioning for the last four weeks or so on about 4 hours of sleep a night.
Yeah.
But despite that, I'm feeling good because despite all of, whether it's political interference, whether it's fans being shafted because of how expensive the World Cup is, it's still been a magnificent spectacle. And you know, the co-hosts have been incredible largely, and I've absolutely loved every moment of it on the pitch. So I'm feeling good. I'm feeling like this has been a good tournament for football. You know, for purists, for traditionalists, for people that hate sort of stats and sort of systems-based football. I think that's been dying a death, which we've been asking for years, and I've absolutely loved it. So I'm flying. I
mean, I agree with you on a huge amount of that. And it has been, yet again, football is undefeated. No matter what Gianni Infantino does, no matter what FIFA do, no matter how much they want to undermine the game.
Andrew Giuliani.
And the conversations out of this, yes, we are going to be talking about the Balogun thing. I think that's one of the biggest controversies in World Cup history, and there will continue to be a conversation about it. And we're going to talk 64-team World Cup today. The one area I disagree with you on here is this idea of, and I hear you say about this regularly, and I understand you're a football purist, this idea that it's moved away from people who like systems-based football. I think this World Cup, more than any other World Cup I've watched, more than any other major tournament I've watched, people keep talking about the superstars. I think this is the World Cup of coaching. I think this is the World Cup where great management is what has got most teams through to a certain stage. I think it's the World Cup where more than any other I can identify. You want to talk about
those things can go hand in hand, Will.
You want to talk about like the comeback of like Argentina against Egypt, right? Yeah. We can talk about the VAR and we can talk about like whether you think they were robbed or screwed or any of that. Yeah. But the big move was, in the hydration break, which I still hate them, I'm not going to turn around and suggest I like them, a decision was made to move Messi out to the right wing, to exploit that space. Egypt didn't react to it, and that was to do with heat maps, and that was to do with XG, and that was to do with statistically looking at the game from that food. And my point is that I agree with you, but I think those two things can go hand in hand. I think there can be a marriage of those two things.
I don't mean it in that football coaches shouldn't use all the data available to them. What I mean is the approach of the 11 players on the pitch. And I think we are living in a world where the Mavericks are the Mavericks of the game, Matt Letizia, for example, people like that can't
never cite that name on this show again, but
they can't thrive anymore because every player is inundated and overloaded with instructions about exactly where they need to be at every moment of the game, right? And I think that doesn't exist. That's been coached out of players. That doesn't mean that Scaloni can't use a heat map and say, right, Messi, go out on the right and do what Angel Di Maria used to do for us and change the game. That's great. But I'm saying that the style and the philosophy of the football games in and of themselves, I think, have been shackles off, and that's a great thing.
The problem is it's shackles off within the system. Like, I look at how Jude Bellingham's performed, and he has been sensational, and I think I genuinely believe...
Jude Bellingham's done it in 8 and 10.
I genuinely believe that England are going to beat Argentina on Wednesday. I've stated that out. I think that they are going to raise their game again. I think they are going to win on Wednesday. I think France are going to beat Spain. And I think we're going to see France and England as the final. That's been my belief for a little while now, and I really have been backing it up in the last couple of days. I think when you get to that final, whoever wins between France and England, the golden ball should go to Michael Olise or Jude Bellingham. Whoever basically wins that game. Because at the end of the day, people want to talk about the individual performance. It's always a team award. The Ballon d'Or is still a team award. You still have to win competitions in order to win the Ballon d'Or. For me, the Bellingham thing has been fascinating because, yes, he has been absolutely sensational. He's taken games by the scruff, but he has done it all within that Tuchel system. He's been at his best when those trios have been working, when they've been working those rotations. When you see that goal, right? Forget about the wire of God and everything else. You see how that goal came together. It was everyone did their job. Anderson picked that ball up, drove forward. Gordon moved into the space there. Bellingham came across this. That's exactly Tuchel's vision.
Well, that's a
they operated within the system then scored.
So then you could say 20 years ago, when Mavericks of the game were normal and were allowed to roam freely, that they were working in a system. There's always a system. But what I'm saying, this idea that... my point is, I don't think Tuchel is overcoaching these players. I don't think these players are shackled by too much instruction from Thomas Tuchel, like you've seen, I think, with lots of players that Pep Guardiola signed at Manchester City, for example, and have failed. His transfer record at Manchester City hasn't been amazing. His title-winning record has been. I'm not taking that away from him. But my point is, yes, there's always a system, Will, but that doesn't mean that all systems are the same. Not all systems are equal. And so players are always under instruction. They're always being told what to do, but it's what they're being told and how much they're being told to do at the expense of their natural gift. And the great thing that Thomas Tuchel's done with Jude Bellingham is I think he's worked him into submission by giving him the cold shoulder in the build-up to the World Cup by strong-arming Jude Bellingham and owning the narrative about Bellingham in the media. That softened Bellingham. He's now brought him under his wing and allowed him to be the player that we know he is, which is a world-class generational talent.
I do think we have moved away from... Because what you're talking about in those eras of Mavericks, and I don't disagree that there were wonderful times in football then, and you can go back and whether it's Maradona, whether it's Paul Gascoigne for England, whether it's where actually players were truly given like the... Right, we have got an anchor. We've got an anchor in the middle of the field. We have traditional old school wingers, and in a 4-4-2, Paul Gascoigne, you're in the middle of the park, but basically do what you want. Yeah. Wherever you pop up is going to be the right spot, and you're going to do the right thing. I don't think that exists in football at all anymore. Even when you look at this brilliant France team, right? You look at the way that front four interact with each other, and I go back to all the way back to the first game of the tournament, right, against Senegal, where they lined up as we expected France to line up for this tournament, with Dembele, with Doué, who actually has been more replaced by Barcola recently, and with Elise behind Mbappe. That's how they're set up. And Elise was going to be coming in off the right and Dembele was going to be playing a central role. And they got to half-time that Senegal game and they went, it's not really working, this. Switch it. Moved Elise inside, brought Dembele outside. That's how they've played for the rest of the tournament. And Elise has been their best player. I'm sorry, I know Mbappe's getting all the goals and has the moments of magic, but Elise has been the one who's pulled every string.
Has the football.
And so I think that, yes, the Mavericks are being given some license to do as they wish. But that France team is a prime example of you watch actually how if you want to go and watch the BBC 3D rendering, or if you want to watch the way that the heat map's set, or if you want to go and do the nerdy research, they are playing in very specific roles, but they are just doing brilliant things within it.
Has the football been better in this World Cup than the Premier League the last 5 years in terms of entertainment value?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say better than last year's Premier League.
So it's been more entertaining.
Maybe the last 2 years.
My point is it's been more entertaining because the players aren't overcoached like they are in the Premier League. And of course, tournament football lends itself to that. But I don't think that managers have been obsessing over the things that we see in major leagues all over the world.
So here's what I will say about that, though, is I think that when we talk about that, we're talking about, the top end of the Premier League. We're talking about Man City, we're talking about Arsenal, we're talking about their Premier League title races.
Those teams below them are copycats.
But let's talk about the brilliant coaching at Bournemouth, the brilliant coaching at Brighton, the brilliant coaching at Sunderland, and they're playing entertaining football as well. You don't have to be a brilliant coach and also play such rigid football it's boring. It just so happens to be the way that Pep Guardiola and Mikel Arteta play. And actually, it's only the way Mikel Arteta's played the last 2 years because he's reacted to the fact that they couldn't get it over the line, and suddenly he's gone inside his tactical shell in order to play more efficient football. But actually, it's been brilliant coaching beyond that level that has allowed Forest to get to the position that they got to, that has allowed, prior to last season, that's allowed the Brightons and the Brentfords and the
I'm not
Bournemouths
saying
to
that generations
for,
ago that
for European football.
I'm not saying generations ago in the era of the Maverick that there wasn't brilliant coaching. Of course there was.
But I think it's very systematic coaching now. I think, like, football
My
in
point
general,
is, the football's been much more entertaining during this World Cup than I've seen in any recent domestic season in the Premier League. And that's a celebration of the World Cup. And that's a celebration of this World Cup achieving things on the pitch, despite all the efforts of the top brass off the pitch trying to ruin the integrity of the game. So I'm celebrating.
Have we got too nerdy early doors? Has that happened? This is not the direction the show is meant to be going in at all. But this is what happens when me and Max Scott get in a room together or start firing back and forth on a WhatsApp chat. Just finally on that point, how do you feel about, like, Anthony Gordon coming out in his halftime interviews and being very, like, analytical about, in the first 20 minutes we didn't get our press right, we were able to change that after, like, talking both very openly about it, but talking like he's a scientist talking about football.
I think you got to embrace it.
Anthony Barry, sorry. Does Anthony Gordon? Yeah, wrong Anthony. But
I think
what I mean.
Anthony Barry is a very cerebral man who is self-made and has become, despite not having a spectacular career, despite even in the early stage of his coaching career.
I would guess 90% of people watching football hadn't heard of him before this.
Absolutely,
and that's not mean to denigrate those people.
No,
it's just he's not a character.
Anthony Gordon is what meritocracy looks like in football coaching. Anthony Gordon is...
Anthony Barry. Sorry, that's my fault.
And Anthony Barry is a great picture of that. And I think he's been an incredibly refreshing addition to the coverage because part of his role is this halftime spokesman. Yeah. And he often...
Those interviews are normally so terrible as well.
But naturally he's got his finger on the pulse. He has his finger on the pulse and he speaks the language of fans, or he notices the things that fans notice, and I think that's been another great aspect of the England national team.
I think it's really interesting for me because, from my perspective, as like someone who does enjoy the nerdy statistical analysis,
really, didn't know that? Never caught that.
And the thing is, actually, I'm not like I get painted as the XG guy. I actually don't like XG. My nerdiness.
You give
off
off
that
XG
point.
vibes.
Yeah,
mate.
exactly. Don't I?
Smell it from
don't I? Don't I just? I hate XG actually, but for me, I like that football coverage has become like not just fan-based and bombast, and that colour commentators who for so many years I thought were brilliant. You go back to like David Pleat and people like that, and they watch 5 minutes of a game of football and they tell you 4 things that you haven't noticed because you're watching just as a fan. And they're like, well, if you see the way the midfield is set up, the reason they're not getting success here, and they're like, oh, yeah, and I feel like I'm learning something watching them. And that's what I get when I watch Emma Hayes, and that's what I get when I watch I get frustrated when it is a little too passion and fan-led. I think there's got to be a mix of those two things. Yeah. Obviously,
everything in balance.
The reason we actually care about football is because you and I are in the pub on Saturday night and biting our fingernails and drinking twice as much as I normally would during that game because I'm so nervous and celebrating that big moment. That's what football's really about. But I am the person who goes and watches, The Athletic or Adam Cleary on YouTube.
It can play a supporting role. It can play a supporting role so that you can nerd out, that's fine. But everything in balance, please. Because if everything's put on a graph for the television screen, if everything's put on a spreadsheet, or there's a percentage to everything, you kill what's the main thing about the game, which is the emotion that it elicits in people and how it makes people and communities and nations and the entire world feel. So that should always be the main thing. Yes, there's room for these sorts of stats, etc. And we can't avoid it because that's the way the game's going. But not too much of it, please. Don't shove it down my throat.
Let's talk about that passion and about that coverage. We've got 2 games coming up in the next 2 days that couldn't be more perfectly set up.
Top 4 ranked sides.
Top 4 ranked sides. France against Spain in what you would argue the 2 European superpowers of the last 2 decades.
Without a doubt.
That French team of the late 90s and through to 2006, and then that Spain team essentially who picked up that baton through the next 8 to 10 years. And even now, like, you could argue the 2 best squads in this tournament. You could argue like there's some people who want to paint that as being the final, and that England Argentina is the kind of who's going to be the runner up.
Place runner up.
Yeah, okay. It's not third place, as we all know. That game is utter nonsense. But from that perspective, France Spain set up absolutely beautifully, and yet if you want to talk about France-Spain is almost like the nerds game. That's almost like the game that's for the people who are like prior to the game are looking at the tactics and examining how Spain are going to close down and how's the 19-year-old going to do up against Kylian Mbappe. And those are like, I'm having those nerdy tactical thoughts. When I look at England-Argentina, and I say this obviously as an England fan, but I like to think the rest of the world would feel this emotion. For me, this is the greatest rivalry in world football from a international perspective when it comes to, I'm not saying that, it holds more weight than Nigeria, Ghana. I'm not saying it holds more weight than USA, Mexico for our USA listeners. But when it comes to World Cups, the significance of this game every time it's played, whether it's 66 and England beating them on the way to the World Cup, whether it's 86 and the hand of God and then Maradona's brilliant goal straight afterwards, whether it's 98 and David Beckham getting sent off and Sol Campbell having that ridiculous goal disallowed late on and everything that came with that and the penalties, or even 2002 with Beckham's penalty, and that might have only been a group stage game, but coming 4 years later and the everything it elicited, this for me, if I could have chosen a team to face at this stage, to face Lionel Messi in his final game, what it will be if we beat them, to face the Argentina side who cheer about the English aren't too stoic, and that actually the chant that they chant not just to Englishmen but to other people, if you're not jumping in the stands you are an Englishman, because they don't believe that we're passionate, because they believe we don't care about the football, and they're singing in the dressing room about doing it for Leo, doing it for Diego, doing it for the Falklands, and like this is the game where more than any other, to borrow a very English truism, I would love it if we beat them. Yeah. I would love it.
If Netflix made a soap opera about one international football fixture, it would be England-Argentina. It's as simple as that. And you've hit the nail on the head. It's absolutely massive. And what makes this even better, just within the context of this World Cup, is England and Argentina have been the two teams that come good in moments, that have game-changing moments. France are the team that play fluid, symmetrical, gorgeous football and look like, and they are the team to beat. And for anybody, whether it's Spain, England, or Argentina, it's an almost impossible task. That's so it seems. And if you look at the betting markets, that's how it is. Spain have only conceded, or have rarely conceded. I can't remember. They only conceded once. Is it
once? One goal to Belgium in the last round,
and they've got players that we're waiting to announce themselves at this World Cup. Whether it's Nico Williams, whether it's Lamine Yamal, who've both been plagued with fitness issues and injury and finding their stride, and they've got one opportunity to do it against France. England, Argentina are the two teams that have found ways, the fact that Argentina have taken extra time to get through Cape Verde, have taken extra time to get through 10-man Switzerland, have taken, a comeback of the ages and a little bit of help from VAR, you could argue, to get through Egypt.
Let's not
go there. So they've gone on this rocky journey, and England themselves have had to come from behind twice. England themselves have gone through the highs of that Croatia game. We're going to win the World Cup. We're back. We're playing amazing football, to trying to find our feet. This fixture in and of itself is going to be, and I'm calling it now, the most entertaining game of this World Cup. If you think that we've already had an all-timer in England-Mexico and what that brought with the altitude, the fans, the red cards, all that sort of stuff, the 2 goals in 2 minutes from Jude Bellingham, I think Argentina, England's going to top that, because you've got...
The streets of Atlanta are not going to know what's hit them. Is going to be...
It's going to be something else.
Honestly...
And England are going to win it. I'm really confident England are going to win it.
When you get into that cauldron of that stadium, and the fact that it's indoors and under a roof, and it's just going to be building for the 2-3 days beforehand. And I don't like the breaks in this World Cup. I don't like having a day off. Actually, I've liked having the number of games we've had, as much as we're going to talk about the 64 teams coming up. I don't know. Having 3 or 4 days to really think about just this game. France, Spain, again, we're for an international audience, so we shouldn't talk about this game like it means less, but I'm with you. I think England Argentina is going to be the pinnacle of this World Cup from all of that perspective, and you can only hope that the final lives up to it.
Today I had my first pang of nerves. I've been so sort of 24/7 World Cup fever, coverage, work, passion. I've not really been able to take in the moment when England play until I'm in front of the TV screen and I put my laptop down and I've got a beer in my hand. This morning, while I was working and because there are less games now, I had time to process what this actually is, covering quite a few stories this morning about the significance of this game. I got my first butterfly of this World Cup.
I can't wait. Absolutely can't wait for Wednesday. We've got another game before that. We will talk some France-Spain coming up. We've some great guests joining the show today. Ben Jacobs will talk transfers coming up. We're also going to get the Spurs perspective after their summer spending spree with Chris Cowlin. Whatever I'll say on PSR and SCR and everything else. I'll talk about the nerdy nonsense around football, but is it actually... is actually killing off the ability of teams to grow and compete. And we're going to get into this 64-team World Cup. Gianni Infantino, what are you doing, pal? Up next here on the S-Word, sponsored by Cowlin.
Yeah, boy.
The daily deep dive into the world of football.
The S-Word.
From talkSPORT. talkSPORT presents
The S-Word.
high energy exchanges, fiery fan reactions, and the biggest football debate.
The S-Word.
From talkSPORT.
You're back with the S-Word, sponsored by talkSPORT. I'm Will Gavin. Max Scott alongside me, live across the US, Canada, across the Americas, bringing you reaction and build-up to these semi-finals. Two absolutely sensational games.
Felters.
Taking on Spain, England, Argentina. Oh! I'm hyped. Max Scott, I'm so hyped. We've got loads coming up in the show. Nate Bucati is going to join us to talk about how much of a success this World Cup has been in the US outside of the performance of the US MNT. We're going to talk with Christina Unkel. Loads to get into on the refereeing side of things. And we'll talk transfers as well, with some big money already being spent in the Premier League. But a couple of teams possibly under the cosh to sell, who maybe shouldn't be. Let's put it that way. We'll get into all of that over the next hour. But let's talk some Gianni Infantino.
Please.
Hey, I know
Any opportunity
I know it's a topic du jour of yours.
Yeah, any opportunity I can get, I think, to expose how crooked this man is.
It is
Let me at it.
truly astonishing that for years we dealt with Sepp Blatter running FIFA.
He looks like a saint now.
And Gianni Infantino came in and made all these correct noises about how we're perceived worldwide. We know how much we need to clean this up. We know, and then somehow we end up with a World Cup in Qatar and a World Cup in Saudi Arabia and an expansion of the World Cup, which in theory isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like, there are elements of this expansion of the World Cup to 48 teams which have been a real joy. Without that expansion, you might not have ended up with stories like Curacao or stories like Cape Verde. Like, those are wonderful things that have happened to world football.
This is what blurs the lines around Infantino, by the way, because you can separate the art from the artist in a sense. You know, if you look at the development of football in Curacao and Cape Verde and the fact that they are, were allowed to and able to fund a chef because in their previous World Cup qualification they all got food poisoning. This is all great things. You know, it's great that football is developing worldwide. I would argue that's still possible with Infantino out the door. And so what I don't want to do is I don't want us to attribute it exclusively to Infantino, because it is possible to expand the game and to use the inordinate amounts of money that this game provides and distribute it to the places that it needs to be and grow the game without having a crook at the top.
So with all that in theory, let's go over Gianni's comments from yesterday. He said these are all issues we'll be examining after the World Cup. He told Swiss broadcaster Blue Sport when asked if the tournament could grow to 64 teams. When organising a World Cup, it's important to organise it for the whole world, not just Europe and South America. I mean, you could argue that the fact that the games are kicking off at 3 p.m. local time in America over the next 2 days, not that I want to argue Masters point for him, but is a little bit aimed at the European market, but effectively the entire world. Every nation should be allowed to dream of participating in the World Cup. It's again Gianni Infantino saying things that we want people to say, that we want to hear. The fact that 10 African teams in this World Cup for the first time, 9 of them get out of the group stage. These are real positives for world football and world football growth. And you mentioned it. The Cape Verde example is better than any, where that nation could not afford to travel the huge distances that you have to travel for African qualification. Like, there was no way they're going to be able to afford it. And FIFA had a pot of money. They go to FIFA. There is this pot of money available, and they essentially support them to be able to go and compete. They qualify for the World Cup, and they set themselves up for years to come. Not just, by the way, not just setting themselves up for years to come as a footballing nation, but now as a tourist destination. People became aware of Cape Verde, and every resort and hotel is sold out for the whole summer.
10 islands, one nation.
It's done some.
I didn't know that until Cape Verde drew against Spain. And then I went and spoke to a load of Cape Verdeans in London, and now I know more about them. That's great. But let's not get it twisted. I don't think there's any coincidence that Gianni Infantino reminds people he wants to, or really officially launches this idea of a 64-team World Cup on the same weekend that it was revealed that the decision to take away Balogun's match suspension, essentially, was that decision was taken by one man, FIFA's disciplinary committee chair, Mohamed Al-Kamali, in an unprecedented case. That doesn't happen. Usually, when there's no precedent for something, for an incident in a football game, 3 people from a 17-person committee will sit together and make that decision. Which,
to be clear, he's not normally on either.
No,
like he normally doesn't get involved in the minutiae of it.
So the reason I say this is I think this is tactical from Gianni Infantino. He knows that politically he's gone down like a wet fart, right, across the world. People don't like him. Politicians all over the world.
I'd argue around the world, outside of the borders of the 50 states of one of the host nations, where they're very happy with the job he's done, it seems.
Yes, a small group of people have, but we all know that the football world and the wider world have condemned the intervention or the acceptance of political interference by Gianni Infantino. And so we also know that powerful people will cling to power at every single opportunity. And Gianni Infantino knows that he's going to garner a lot of support from FIFA nations that never qualify for the World Cup, because he can line their pockets by allowing them into a World Cup or giving them a greater chance to qualify. So this is tactical. This is intentional from Gianni Infantino, because he's under a lot of pressure. And so let's see it for what it is. This isn't Gianni Infantino wanting to spread football even wider. This is Gianni Infantino wanting to cling desperately to power because his name is in the mud where it belongs.
He wants to spread the word of Infantino further. And, much like a Mormon preacher, he's heading out there into every smaller nation he possibly can and trying to indoctrinate whoever he can to get on his side. I totally understand all of that. And I do not want to find myself in a position in any way, shape or form where I defend Gianni Infantino.
But you're going to defend Gianni Infantino?
I'm absolutely not. But can we talk about the idea of a 64-team World Cup without the Infantino element of it?
Let's go.
So, the 4018 World Cup has been much more of a success than I believed it was going to be. I did not like the fact it was going to take us more games of a World Cup to eliminate 16 teams than a normal World Cup lasts, right? It took us 72 games to get to that point. A normal World Cup is only, 64 games? That is ridiculous to me. I still think that's ridiculous to me. What I want to kind of get a sense of, and ask you as well, as somebody who's out there, who's speaking to fans, who's got the finger on the pulse a little bit. When we sit in this room and we talk about the joys of this World Cup, and when we cover it daily, and when it's our job, and when, like you say, 4 hours sleep a day, watching every single game, I think we have been treated to a proper festival of football. Like, actually, the quality has been so much higher than I expected. I think this tournament has been excellent, top to bottom, pretty much. There's probably 3 games I can cite that haven't been good. And let's be honest, there's 3 games on a normal Premier League weekend I could cite that
without
good,
doubt.
at least.
Yeah, good point.
So that is a real positive to me. But I did spend a little time this weekend because I actually managed to leave the house and spend some time with normal human beings. And I picked the brain of a bunch of people. I was at Market Halls in Victoria, and I just, whoever I was getting chatting to, I was asking them about how they had received this World Cup in general. And I do think the expansion of the World Cup and the extra games has reduced general interest from people when their own team isn't playing. Like, the average England fan is not going, actually, adding 50 games to a World Cup has been a positive to me. Going from 64 to 104 games. Yeah. If you were to add 64, if you were to add 16 more teams in and you become a 64-team World Cup, you're talking about 4 extra groups. And I would support this, you then change it to a system of just the top 2 teams get through and you go straight to a round of 32. You're adding 24 more games on top of that. So we're going to a 128-game World Cup, which is going to go over 7 weeks. Taking our media hats off, is that actually going to improve the quality of the World Cup? Is it going to improve the engagement worldwide? Or are some people going to start to get a little bit sick of just how much is being pushed their way?
Getting a straw poll of what fans in Europe think of the already extended World Cup is an accurate analysis of how positive it's been received, because the main reason people maybe haven't enjoyed it as much as they might do is because the kickoff times here in Europe haven't helped us. And so, for me, Cape Verde in and of itself is a story enough to justify the expansion of the World Cup. But 62 teams is too far. And the reason I'm concerned about that is because I'm concerned about the impact of fixture congestion on the overall quality of domestic leagues around the world, because football players play too much football.
But you're not going to see individual players play more games. You're not going to add another round of knockouts. A team that gets beyond the group stage is going to play the same number of games as they played at this World Cup. In theory, the only thing I didn't like about this World Cup from the way that they did it is I would much rather have had the groups only have 2 teams come out and you have a bye system, and therefore some teams would have played 1 game fewer. That's the only thing I would have done differently. Players will play the same amount of games, right? And you could look at the nations who didn't qualify for this World Cup, right? If it was 64 teams, some of the nations that would get in there, Nigeria and Italy and Denmark, and I mean, from our perspective, Wales and Ireland, and like there are good quality football teams. Chile, like, they had a terrible qualifying campaign, but they have got a squad full of players who are playing in top leagues across the world. Like, they are a team who could have come to this World Cup and had an impact on it.
But then I don't
think the quality of football necessarily drops.
We're gifting it to them, and so this idea of meritocracy and the hard work required to qualify for a World Cup goes out the window. And I think, in a way, it dilutes the significance of a World Cup. It dilutes the fact that the very best nations play there. It should be elite. It's the World Cup. It's not the FA Cup, right? Where everyone's got a shot. Gianni Infantino will just create the World FA Cup, and he'll say, we'll have an early qualifying round from the lowest ranked sides, but they've got a chance of getting all the way to the final. That's what it's becoming, and it should be elite.
They're Nations Leaguing the World Cup.
Yeah, that's what they're doing.
They're Nations Leaguing the World Cup. But I would argue the fact that you see the top 4 teams in the world, and I'm devil's advocating a little bit here, but
when was the last time that happened? Will,
you see the last 4 teams getting through? You can see the quarter-final round. You can argue that was a great mix of teams that have surprised.
Yes.
In Switzerland, in Norway, in Morocco aren't a surprise. They made the semi-finals last time. But you could say all of that, and that actually semi-finals, final, you've got exactly what you want. You've got the elite of the elite. You've got the best of the best going head to head. The winner of this World Cup is going to be one of the top 4 sides in the world, guaranteed at this point. That's kind of what you're looking for. Don't we want the celebration of football in the group stages to be aren't we excited about the idea of that joy of Cape Verde and Curacao and those Middle Eastern nations.
But the fact that everyone gets that joy, Will, just dilutes it. We're just giving them participation medals. It's nice every now and again, but if that's the only thing we do, bleeding hearts for a small nation that's in the World Cup, how lovely. Like, that's nice for a time, but Christmas is only special because it comes once a year. So if we do this every single World Cup for every single nation that's got 11 players that have some football boots, then what's the point?
I think the idea this is 11 nations, like extending it by 16 teams,
it's
not like
it's a slippery slope because we're extending it like in consecutive tournaments. We're not even letting the current format and the current amount of teams to breathe. We're instantly extending it. Like, let's see how this goes. Let's get used to this for a while before handing out participation medals to every nation that wants to play. I just think not everything is about expansion. Not everything should be about consistent growth and money making. Let's just let the World Cup be the World Cup for the teams that deserve it, that are the best in the world. I just think it's too far. It's too much expansion. Chill out.
So are you happy with 48?
Well, I'm going to have to be. I'm going to have to get used to it. But let me get used to it.
We're talking hypotheticals here. Like, the whole thing is hypothetical.
I didn't want it.
If you could roll it back, would you roll it back?
No. I think it has been 51% a success.
If that's not sitting on the fence, I don't know what is.
It's been okay.
You sit here and you talk about the emotion and passion of football. You sit here and talk about that's what football.
But my point is we're diluting it if we let everybody. We are.
This isn't. We're not talking about.
We're saying, do you want your moment? And your player that's a plumber that is actually now playing at the World Cup, and we can Instagram that and put it on a reel.
No. But you're talking about that as if like the 16 teams who will join will now no longer be professional nations. As if like I totally understand.
I'm exaggerating for effect to an extent, but you get my point, right?
But when you look at what happens with like the qualifiers, etc., you're not going to suddenly get to a point where England have this amazing qualifying record because they end up being at the top of a seeded pot, and the biggest nation that they face might also get into a World Cup as one of those teams in an expanded 48 or 64, but most likely not. Like that's the level of team they're facing. You're talking about this as if like the San Marinos of the world are suddenly going to start qualifying for the World Cup.
Going to have a better chance now, aren't they? Though?
Yes, but for the most part, if you expanded it to 64 teams, if you look at teams, it's a very, very like basic way of doing it because obviously teams outside of the top 48 have qualified for the World Cup. But if you look at the teams that sit from 49 to 64 in the world, a lot of those are big teams who are professional teams who have good players.
But that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to qualify, though.
No, it doesn't. But what I'm saying is that I think you're talking about it like we're suddenly going to be allowing in nations who only started playing football 10 years ago, and I think it's a much higher quality than that. I think it will be.
So you want it?
I don't know if I want it.
Well, there you go. Don't come at me for not wanting it.
Playing a bit of devil's advocate, just a bit of I think it's an interesting debate to have. I think what my point is I don't know if I want it. But I'm open to it after seeing how successful a 48 team was. Whereas I was very, very anti 48 teams. I've got to tell you, I hated the expanded format. I hated it for what I thought was going to be the dilution of the quality of the football. I hated it for the extra number of games. And I do think that to an extent I've got some blinkers on because I've ended up doing this new show. I've ended up working on it. So I have ended up watching basically all 104 games of this World Cup. I'll only watch 103. I will not watch the third place playoff, even if England are in it. I think maybe I've got some blinkers onto that, and I'd like to know. You're absolutely right. A straw poll of a bunch of people in a pub in South London is not a good way of judging it, but it's the first opportunity I've had to go out and talk to those people. I also think that the most of the voices we hear from around these World Cups are people who have paid huge amounts of money to go and attend it, paid ludicrous ticket fees to FIFA, have travelled, have paid ludicrous hotel prices, and so they are there. They are having a good time, and they're the people we're hearing from the voices. And
Gianni Infantino,
yeah, it's been a wonderful success.
Mate, he's increasing the pool of people he can fleece.
What does the
That's
average? What does the average football fan who's watching at home in those countries where they want to expand it really think about all these extra games? So people,
well, they'll find out when he forces them to remortgage their homes just to go and watch their nation play.
Right, I will do some Mike Grella. I'm sorry. Let's just talk about this very quickly because we're going to get to Christina momentarily. But I just thought it was a really fascinating conversation. I wanted to get into it. Did you see Mike Grella's comments?
Yeah, of course I did. Unfortunately.
So, for people who haven't seen this, I'm just going to summarise them very briefly. Mike Grella, former
Scunthorpe, Bury, Colorado Rapids,
former professional football
Michigan
player,
Beavers,
in the same way that calling me, yeah. don't. I will say it on air. I will do it if you say those things. Listen, former professional footballer who finds himself being a voice on TV in the US. And listen, I don't want to be a person that buries somebody who's doing that for a job, because the fact of the matter is that, I don't know, Max, you strike me as the kind of man athletically who maybe you played at least some youth football. You maybe got into a couple of academies.
I mean, I didn't play at his level, right?
Yeah.
But I played relatively decent level football as a young bloke into being a young adult. Yeah,
I did.
Nowhere near his level. I put my hands up for that.
So I always think that you're going down a dangerous road if you end up down that argument of like, well, did you ever play football? Because I think it's utter nonsense.
What I would say, the gap between me and Mike Grella is closer than the gap between Mike Grella and the players that he's commenting on.
That's interesting, because I've always thought to myself that the gap between Mike Grella and Leo Messi, for example, is a much tighter gap than the gap between me and Mike Grella.
Absolutely not.
You've not seen me play football, pal. But
he played for the Carolina Railhawks 7 times. Hey. Don't tell me that he's closer to Messi than me.
No, than me, I'm saying he is. Maybe not you, but like I say, you've not seen me play football. Anyway, let's get on to the point of it. He has dug out the England team after this game. He said the good news is you've got 2 games left, right? Semi-final, final, and you can actually win the World Cup for the first time since '66. That is a positive. You're competing. You're finding ways to win. Bad news is you're not very good at football. He also went on to say, and this is where I just was like, leave the great analogies to the great English commentators who know what they're doing with them. You're not Sid Waddell, mate. When you start talking about, it's like having the world's ugliest daughter and saying, oh, you're so beautiful, baby. Are you not a father? Because even if your daughter was ugly to the rest of the world, you would consider them beautiful. And we consider this England team beautiful, even if the winning has been done ugly. He said it was embarrassing. He said the way we got through it, the way we made Norway look like world beaters. A Norway team who'd just beaten Brazil, by the way, who are a much more accomplished team than you're giving them credit for. And listen, these comments have gone viral. People have had a bit of a laugh at him. Yeah. I don't want to say that he shouldn't be talking about football, because the fact is that people could come at us and say that. I think that you should be allowed to talk about football if you can have an intelligent, thoughtful view on football. But nothing you said here was intelligent. Nothing you said here was thoughtful. This was all trying to get some clicks by digging out imagination. And do you know what, mate? Doesn't matter, because we're in a World Cup semi-final. Yeah. When did the USMNT go out again? The USMNT that you weren't good enough to ever play for, even when they were crap? Exactly. Doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is the likes of Jude Bellingham and Harry Kane have scored more goals in this World Cup than he did for the Long Island Rough Riders. The good news is they don't take any notice of this fella. The bad news is that because you played a couple of games for Leeds, Scunthorpe and Bury, you've been given an opportunity to speak to a nation that is growing in its support of the game, and you're ruining it for them because you're giving them a bad rep. I mean, what a poor voice, what a poor take from a poor player on players that he couldn't lace their boots. So, there's good news and bad news on Mike Grella as well.
Mike Grella. That's the answer. Wonderful stuff from Max Scott. Wonderful stuff from everyone getting involved in the comments. You can find us at talkSPORT S-Word. You can find us at talkSPORT as well. And on all the social medias, you'll see it there lovingly on the side of the screen. Instagram, X, etc. Get in there and get in the DMs and let us know what you think about any of the topics we're addressing today. Up next, as if we haven't done enough talk about the intricacies of football behind the scenes yet, we're going clear and obvious with Christina Unkel up next.
Yeehaw! Around here, we only use the F word.
talkSPORT presents
the S word.
presents
The S Word.
Listen again and subscribe.
Wherever you get your podcasts.
And on the talkSPORT USA YouTube channel.
You're back with the S Word, sponsored by Calci. I'm Will Gavin, alongside me, the great Max Scott for the show today.
Oh, that's nice. Great.
That's not what I say about you behind the scenes, but
It's not what you say when you WhatsApp me. Just come for me when I've not asked for it.
well, it's because I know you can take it. I have this reputation, Max, for maybe being a bit opinionated and maybe
Really?
being a little bit
Didn't get that
strong-willed. I'm PGMOL Gavin. Yeah, I am. And I see you as someone who is like that as well. I am a strong believer in you should have a strong opinion and you should be able to debate it. If you're talking about something you love, like football, and you're sat in the pub,
There's not enough
what's
of
the
it
point
in
of
the
being
world.
wishy-washy with each other?
Yeah, there's not enough
Like,
of it.
have some fun, spark off each other. Just don't being loud and opinionated about it. I want that back from you.
Yeah,
Push
exactly,
back.
yeah.
Although,
Let's have it.
I think Max is having me so far. I'm not going to lie. I'm on the ropes. He's getting some jabs into the ribs, so I need to recover in the second hour of the show. Keep getting in touch with us on all the usual social media locations, on YouTube, at TalkSport S Word, and also on TalkSport as well. But now it's time for... There wasn't anything controversial this weekend. A little bit of this.
After review.
Clear and obvious with Christina Unkel on the S Word.
The number 20 United States committing serious foul. Red card. Wow.
Christina Unkel, how are you? Wonderful to see you.
Nothing controversial that happened over the past couple of days. I'm doing very well.
Let's first and foremost talk about what Max Scott has rightly deemed as the wire of God from this weekend, because, it's been a moment that has been much talked about and raked over and debated. And first of all, I'd like to say I have seen a video of you talking about this already online. The smoky eye was sensational, and we'd like to see that more on the broadcast, please. But
TV makeup.
talk to me about this decision. Should it have been called back? Should Norway, do they have a right to be angry about this?
So first and foremost, because everyone seems to lose it, is yes, if it touched a outside object, here would be this video camera wire is what is being said, then yes, it would have been a drop ball. It would have fit under the VAR protocols. It would have been included, and the goal would have been taken back. The equalizer would have been taken back. So I just want everyone to understand that is the appropriate decision if it hit the wire. Now, I say if it hit the wire and people are like, well, the referees didn't know. They didn't know till after the game. They didn't know till halftime. That's not true. Okay. And so I've been very, very clear. Once again, people just see something and they run, right? But I've been very clear that, the only person, because I've had access to a couple of cameras, I was covering the game live. We went taking a look for it because I saw Fox Sports post it right before halftime, or in the middle of the game, I think, in like the couple minutes right after Jude scored. And I said, okay, what's going on? We were taking a look at it as well, too. And the only person who reacted at that time, because I did hear the press conference, the only person who reacted at that time was, in fact, just the goalkeeper. And as soon as the ball was scored, he went to the referee, French referee, Clement Turpin. I pointed the sign. You can see Clement's face saying, what? And at that time, when you get that kind of information, no matter how random it is, you immediately go to your VAR. You say, the goalkeeper's alleging it hit a wire. Please, can you take a look? So the referees at that time, and I got confirmation, at that time looked to see if it hit the wire. They looked at all the different camera angles. The camera angle I looked at, too, was the sideline camera angle that doesn't show a material change in any movement. Everyone's pointing at one angle, which is the angle behind the goal, saying, oh, there's some slight movement. And I'm like, okay, well, there's really not much movement on the sideline. And then they used the connected ball technology and found no data point saying that it impacted or did anything. So just really clarifying process and the language that went out. It was checked at the time. They had no data and no clear and obvious visual graphic to show that the ball changed. And that's why the goal stood at that time. But if it had touched it, yes, protocol would have been a drop ball.
Christina, having watched it from every angle, do you think it touched it or not?
No, I don't. I mean, we talk about, and I get it, everyone, particularly Croatians, are saying like, if it touched it, it could pick up a hair follicle, but it can't pick up a a spider cam web. And, I'm at the point right now where I'm saying if people aren't trusting the technology and the data and they're saying, no, it's a lie, FIFA's covering, et cetera, why are we paying millions and millions and millions of dollars for this technology when no one's trusting it? So from the things that I've seen, and if we have to rely upon, objective, factual data of millions of dollars and et cetera, then I'm going to lean towards that versus multiple different videos that I have no idea where they took the data input to create a visual graphic or a 3D graphic, or I've seen some doctored videos, right, of showing the ball drop out 90 degrees. Try to remind everyone 90 degrees is this way. It's not this way. It's this way. So if I have to rely on the data, I would think we would all have to rely on the data. But if no one wants to rely on the data, then why do we have it in the first place is basically more of my question at this point.
I think a lot of us would ask that question, but probably with a slightly different lean in our voice as to why do we have that data? Because the question to me, and I know there's that, the BBC 3D modelling, and I know we've seen that the trajectory of the ball does look weird. We haven't seen any clear and obvious, we said the name, evidence of it at the moment. But I think that it does then call into question, because people really do believe that it happened. Then suddenly they can call into question the Croatia decision against Portugal. Does the chip actually work? Have they done enough testing on this before putting it in a major tournament? And I know they used a chip in the ball at the Euros as well, but it comes back down to the same conversation we've had about Gianni Infantino and the door that's been opened by the Flo Balogun situation, meaning that everything can now
Pandora's
be questioned.
box is open.
Do we have a Pandora's box on VAR here as well? Do we have a moment where everything is now going to be questioned and everything is now going to be pulled back? And actually, maybe if we simplified it, that'd be the best thing?
I really do. I mean, it's going to be hard to simplify it just because of, like I said, millions of dollars invested in the training and the technology and the development and, just to be quite honest, the contracts. But I think you both hit it on the head. Pandora's box has been opened by the Balogun case, right? You have such a dynamic lightning character within Messi, right? And then Argentina, there's been lots of conversations that there being favoritism to get to the finals, right? You have the Balogun case. You have finding out that the disciplinary committee, it wasn't a committee that met. It was just his chairman who made the decision unilaterally by himself, is what the allegations are right now. So you just have this huge pile. And I actually feel really unfortunate for the referees, because a lot of the decisions and issues that are coming up are things that are not within their control, that are just being thrown at them, right? A lot of things off the field, whether it was the referee who couldn't come in with his visa, right? Whether it's the politics, whether it's the challenging the integrity of the competition based on the disciplinaries that are happening post that have nothing to do with the officials, because they have nothing to do with those, right? We're not sitting here talking about, was that serious foul play or reckless? Is that yellow versus a red? Like, did that happen inside the box or did it happen outside the box? We're talking about everything else. And I think, I think it's gone. There's got to be a lot of work done off this tournament to try to resolve and bring back the confidence of not just the federations, but also importantly, the fans and the audience. Because once you lose them, then you don't have sport anymore.
I think often, Christina, football fandom has its own sort of psyche. And sometimes I think there's this herd mentality when it comes to discussing VAR and discussing referee and the quality of refereeing and bias within referees, all that sort of stuff. And I can't help, and I don't know what you think about this, that because referees like Gianni Infantino are in some position of authority, yes, totally different levels, but they have positions of power and authority within the game. I can't help but Gianni Infantino, in his allowing of political interference, in his seeming sort of favouritism towards players like Cristiano Ronaldo before the game, I think he's done refereeing he's done their reputation badly, because now football fans are just going to lump referees in with the likes of Gianni Infantino and start having these conspiracy theories about the game. And so match-going football fans are just going to think, oh, you're all the same. You're all part of the same cabal.
I just on that very point, we talked about this around the Argentina-Egypt game, right, Christina? And this is my belief as well. Those 3 decisions, based on the current rules of the game, were officiated correctly. You could argue whether those rules are correct, whether VAR had an overreach and everything else around that. But suddenly you've got a top 3 referee in the world who's being treated like he's some kind of secret agent of like, this is a guy who is the very top of his game and is being treated like he's favouring one team over the other, and it's madness.
Yeah. Look, Infantino is creating an environment where the integrity of referees is going to be questioned more intensely and by more people. That's what I worry.
No, and you hit on the head. I mean, if you take a look at the FIFA disciplinary decision that came out eventually on the Balogun case, I think the day of, after all of the Belgium's appeals, etc., there was a line, I think it was like subsection 4, Madork, where they said, and we're looking and investigated into the referee. There was no it was like a red herring, right? They took their own person, said, oh, we did a deep dive because, there might be some conflicts. You saw CONMEBOL come out with a statement. You saw Cowlin come out with a statement saying there is nothing wrong with these referees. Like it was its own internal way of saying, let's just throw everything else in front of these issues to try to clear our name.
Yeah, let's flood the system.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to do.
The proverbial,
welcome to American news.
The proverbial bus is coming for us. That referee can be what slows it down. Like, what are we going to throw under it? It's going to be him. And that just calls everything into disrepute. And it means that we're going to come out of this World Cup, which has been a brilliant World Cup on the pitch for the most part. And these are the questions we end up asking. And similarly in that game, and actually, Christina, let's, taking our kind of conspiratorial hats and everything else off, I do want to get a clear answer from you on this. We talked about it a little bit on yesterday's show. This idea of initiating contact. I want to get your opinion on the Jed Spence penalty, but can you explain it to me from the terms of Harry Kane's penalty against Mexico, right? They both go to try and kick the ball. The Mexican player gets there first. Harry Kane, in following through, kicks the back of the player's leg. He initiates the contact. They give a penalty. I understand that Jed Spence attempts to protect the ball and puts his leg across the other player, but the fact is the defending player makes the contact with the back of the leg when they are both technically going for the ball, and I just don't see why those two situations are different.
Oh, I love this because there has been a pattern. There's over 7 clips. I mean, each time I sit there and my video operator, Keats, I'm always like, Keats, this is another one. We got to add it to essentially a log of what we have, where we really do have to have this conversation. And thankfully, right, surrounded by some great footballers, I'm able to ask them, do you want this in the game? Like, where do we draw the line between you have the right to that space first versus that last second toe poke, they got the ball, you were already wound up, and then you ended up kicking them in the back of the leg, right? So we talk about even like Pulisic's challenge, right, where he ended up getting hurt at ultimately on that game. He was already in full wind, step in, he connects with the back of the foot. No foul is given in that situation, right? Which I think is the right decision. But then, like, where do we draw that line? So going here originally to Spence, calling that game live, I was like, it's going to be taken back because you use this key word. He moves his body across into the path of the other player. Everyone's saying, yes, defending the ball, but there's some, practicality of when you're in the attacking third, there's not necessarily a need to defend the ball. There's a need to get to the ball first, right? So you're moving more in an attacking vertical position to get there versus trying to initiate the contact, trying to go across and trying to, at the worst case scenario, create yourself a penalty kick. So that one cleanly in our, application interpretations training fits the category of where I knew it was going to be sent down for VAR to overturn it, overturn the penalty kick and to have a direct free kick coming out that way. But you hit it on the head. At what point do we say if someone's in their full circular moment, I'm going to use the stutter step, right? The stutter step wasn't allowed. Now the stutter step's allowed. Now people say, when can you stop stuttering? Well, you stop stuttering as soon as your left foot is planted or your right foot's planted and you begin that momentary motion. You can't stop at that point. That's when the stutter step becomes illegal. Can we apply something like that into the natural flow of the game? That if somebody is about to initiate a play, and I'm blanking on the name blanking on the game right now. It might have been Senegal, I can't recall, but the gentleman's already starting to slide tackle and someone starts to put their foot in. He's already committed to that challenge. He's already down on the ground. He gets the back of the foot. Now we have a penalty kick decision on that, right? And I do think this is where we need to come out with a better consistency because referees are saying right now, based on training, it is a foul. if the person makes contact on the back of the heel, even though they were already committed to that challenge. And I think that needs to be clarified because it's too much of a nuance that I don't think the football world likes.
I think my problem with it, and I feel like I'm going to be appealing to Max when I say this, even though we're going to get into some dark art stuff, right? People don't like diving. People don't like simulation. I totally understand that. But one of the roles of an attacking player, and what we've seen so many brilliant attacking players do over the years, is that ability to step across a defender, to know the right moment, to draw a foul, to be physical enough to protect the ball. And actually, you know that the best outcome for you there is to win a free kick because you're not going to have a goal scoring opportunity. Like, that's part of the game. That is a skill. That is part of what they're doing. Jed Spencer's taken it past 3 players at that point. He's done brilliantly to get into the box. He moves across to protect it. I think that's part of the game, and it feels like we're now over officiating that, where it's like if you've done anything to attempt to shield the ball, and then that gets so messy to me. For me, that was a penalty all day long.
It feels so anti-football though, Christina, that the VAR says when he changes the decision, the attacker put his leg in front of the defender. Well, yeah, because he's going for the ball. So it feels anti-football to me. And at the same time, we've seen throughout the World Cup players buy fouls outside of the box by shielding the ball, diving on the floor. And we're used to those being given for fouls. We praise the likes of Jack Grealish, for example, for doing that in the Premier League season upon season. But in this instance, it just feels anti-football. It feels, well, what else should he do? Should he just allow the... You know, he can't come across the defender. That's part of playing football. You do that to shield the ball.
What you're saying is, should he give the ball away? And if he does, is he no better than Noni Madueke? That's what I'm hearing.
Exactly.
Well, I think you guys are really touching on some points. And like, once again, these applications and interpretations are put into, and if they have not, they need to be put into conversations with stakeholders, right, of the FIFA IFAB committees, which are comprised of managers and players. Arsene Wenger is very involved in a lot of these referee decisions and how we want to apply it. This needs to go back and be workshopped. It really needs to go back and be workshopped. Because to your point, when I saw the play happen live, I was like, Turpin got it. Great penalty decision. I love it. But let's go back and check it as the VAR. And then I'm like, and it's going to be taken back, right? But like everything about me said that was penalty, right? That was penalty from the high camera up, right? The 50-yard, and then Turpin's, where he's at. That's great. Do we get to a point where we basically are saying there's zero contact? Like, we're getting are we getting too in the gray in refereeing and re-refereeing decisions right now?
Christina, wonderful from you as always. Thank you so much for joining us. Christina Unkel, the brilliant Christina Unkel, clear and obvious. We've only got a couple more with Christina before the end of the tournament now. That makes me a little bit sad.
Yeah, I agree with you.
She's so good. And it's
clarity.
It's exactly. It's great because, you are a man who believes in the passion of football and everything else, and maybe the technicality sometimes isn't what you want to focus on, but she does it in such a way that cuts through the nonsense.
Yeah, without a doubt.
And I love it. I think she's brilliant. Coming up in the next hour, the great Nate Bucati will join us as we talk about the impact on this World Cup in America. I've just seen that 1 million people have watched our video from yesterday on TikTok of Master saying those 3 p.m. kickoffs should be at prime time in the host nation. So maybe we'll get into that with Nate as well. We'll talk some transfers. Chris Cowlin joins us. Ben Jacobs joins us. So that's all coming up in the second hour of the S Word, sponsored by Kalshi.
From kickoff to the full-time whistle,
talkSPORT presents
the S Word. featuring Will Gavin and Master Tess Fassian.
And a squad of big-name contributors.
The S Word
from talkSPORT.
What I really like about having someone in the studio with me is it's not just me that's never ready for the segments to start.
I actually needed a hydration break that wasn't long enough.
Actually, it was about 3 minutes, mate. Are you saying 3 minutes isn't long enough for a hydration break?
Not for me, mate. The water cooler's too far away.
It's definitely not. Listen, we've got a great second hour of the show coming up for you. We're going to be talking with the great Nate Bucati to get a little bit of an idea of the American experience of this World Cup when the USMNT aren't involved. We've talked a lot about how their performance has affected the approach out in the States, but what about when the USMNT are involved? How have they found the rest of the World Cup? And I do want to get into that conversation about Tuesday and Wednesday, the kickoff times, because it has really resonated with people on social media in the last 24 hours. So we'll get into that as well. And we'll continue to look forward to these two semi-finals. Plus, the great Ben Jacobs joins us to talk transfers. Max, I enjoyed that first hour. I'm excited about the second hour.
Yeah, mate, let's crack on. What we got this hour?
We got some transfer. We got some transfer news coming up right now, and we're going to talk a little bit of Man United maybe in a little bit, because it looks like we're going to be having confirmation shortly that the Santos deal is across the line. In fact, I think that's just been confirmed and announced. 48 million.
Great signing.
A year plus 2.
It's a great signing.
You're on the Andrew Santos train?
I am, yeah, because I'm not clouded by delusions of grandeur.
Oh, we've got a guest coming.
Okay.
We're going to save this, and in 10 minutes we're going to discuss this. I'm ready. So Andrew Santos, we'll talk about that in a short while. But let's talk about Tottenham, because we haven't really done a huge amount on this show so far. Their spending spree so far this summer already been huge. Supposedly they have the same amount of money to spend again. And this is the nature of the beast. They have had plenty of European football over the years, which has allowed the coffers to build up. They have not spent a lot of money. They have Queens of the Stone Age and System of a Down in town. They've got Jay-Z coming. They've got all of these great money generators at their stadium. So they have some money to spend, and boy, have they been spending it. I'm delighted to say that joining us, the great Chris Cowlin. If you don't already subscribe to his YouTube page, don't already follow the great work he does, you should do. Welcome to the show, Chris. How are you doing, sir?
Hi, Chris.
Well, Max, great to see you again. How are you?
You too, mate. How are you?
Max hasn't bought into the Americanism of clapping the guests.
No, I'm feeling really good actually as a Tottenham fan right now, because after the last 2 seasons, major change is needed at the football club, and the wage structure needs to be broken, which it has done this transfer window. And as you said there, Will, 6 good signings. We've gone out, we've spent money, we're showing real intent, we're showing ambition. This is exactly what us Spurs fans have hoped and wished for many, many years. Because when you think back to 2019, Mauricio Pochettino, going into that brand new stadium at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium there, we've now gone through 7 permanent managers and 4 interim appointments. Spurs cannot keep going on like this. So they need to back a manager. Roberto De Zerbi, of course, got Spurs over the line on the final day of the season, which was very touch and go. And we were all very, very worried. We thought it might be too late after Thomas Frank and Igor Tudor. And these signings are needed, and Spurs need to go out and spend money. And the fact that we can spend up to another £250 million is music to the ears of all of us Spurs fans, because we do need to be very ambitious. This does need to go down as the best transfer window in Premier League history for Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. We cannot be in the same position where we have done for the last 2 Premier League campaigns.
The only sad thing, really, is that Spurs have been forced into this situation. They've been forced into spending the money because they've got egg on their face of how the club's been run. Nothing to do with fans, Chris. I guess my point is, this is what you should have been doing in previous seasons. And so the hierarchy have done what they needed to do. They've done the only thing that they can do, and do what fans have been asking them to do for years. So I'm all for it, Chris. I'm all for it. I just kind of think they're only doing it because they have to. Otherwise, there's no other option than for the fans to turf them out of the club and to find a new buyer, which they obviously don't want to do, because Spurs is a big club that generates a lot of revenue. So they've had to do it, basically.
Yeah, and of course, Max, I think you're absolutely spot on there. Spurs need to go down this route. We need to go out and buy ready-made players, bring in ready-made players. The hierarchy have spoken out about the last couple of years not being good enough, and they want to put us back to where we belong. But Premier League experience is the very, very common theme here in this transfer window. And we need to buy in ready-made players, because we've gone down the data route in previous seasons. And, many Spurs fans that you've probably spoken to over the years since moving in that new stadium have probably said that we haven't backed a manager properly in transfer windows. And, Spurs now seem to be going out. And Roberto De Zerbi, can I just say, I think he is absolutely made for Spurs to play the type of football that he wants to play. And I think he's going to go down extremely well at Tottenham. But to make a real statement signing like Matheus Fernandes and then, a day or two later, then signing Tonali for, £100 million package, this is just unheard of at a club like Tottenham Hotspur. And, Ange Postecoglou said in recent years, while he was Tottenham manager, that, Spurs would never go out and spend £100 million on a player. But he also said that, Tottenham, it does strange things to people. And I know a lot of opposition, a lot of opposition fans at the moment don't like Tottenham showing this ambition. Although we have been heavily criticised for not showing ambition. And as soon as Tottenham do, a lot of people do have a problem with it.
I mean, yeah, I'm surely you don't care, Chris. That's the point. It's surely
of course not.
When people want to say Matheus Fernandes never worth 85, Sandro Tonali never worth 100, maybe you are paying a little bit of a tax because you finished 17th. Maybe there is something to that. But I think most Spurs fans, frankly, couldn't care.
Absolutely. We are in that position now where we need to go out and buy ready-made players, experienced players, people who know what they're doing, people who have done it, been there. And, Spurs need to go on the up. And it's very difficult because we've finished 17th in the last couple of seasons. Spurs now need to jump up considerably in that Premier League table to finish in a European spot. Because as you mentioned at the start there, Spurs are so used to being in European competition and fighting on all fronts. And this is exactly where we need to be. So, we need to go out. We need to spend money. The wage structure has been broken. And most importantly, change is needed. Major change is needed. We have all been crying out for this for many, many, many years. Daniel Levy has been at the football club. Many people wanted him to go out and be that game. The stadium is meant to be a game changer, like you said there, Max. The stadium was meant to be a game changer in 2019. We didn't see that then, but we're seeing it now. And remember as well, I know Gabby Abonlahor has an issue with Spurs going out and spending money, but what I would say is when we moved in that stadium and we moved from White Hart Lane to Wembley and then moved into the stadium, there was multiple transfer windows, 518 days, in fact, that we didn't go out and spend a single penny. So this is Tottenham's time.
That being said, allow me to play a little bit of devil's advocate here because I want to be clear. I like the signings Spurs have made. I think they have been very positive and they've been exactly what Tottenham need. They're rebuilding the spine. And I'm also a big De Zerbi fan. I was when he was at Brighton and I think he is the right man for the job. But we have seen some kind of, Emperor's New Clothes situations over recent years where a team have had a manager they've been very keen on, where they have gone out and spent big money. We've seen it at Chelsea. We've seen it at Manchester United. We've seen it at these teams where it hasn't brought sustained success. So is there any part of you where there's a little bit of, we've already spent 250 million, we're probably going to spend maybe that again on a guy that's only been at the club for 3 months? Is there any creeping doubt about that at all?
I don't think so, because I think when you look at the type of football that he wants to play, and when you look, and like I touched on there, Will, I think a lot of people last season thought it was going to be too late. After the Thomas Frank episode and Igor Tudor, 44 days, waste of time, in my opinion. Those players were so low on confidence. Confidence was on the floor. De Zerbi came in. He didn't moan at all. He even come in and turned around and said, we can't cry about this situation. We've got to get on with it. And many people thought that appointment was too late. Even myself, I thought we were gone. But De Zerbi managed to pick up enough points, got us over the line, and people feel incredibly excited now about De Zerbi and about giving him the money to spend and him having a real big say as well. And that's a big difference at Tottenham as well, giving a manager a real big say and having that input in the signings that we are making. Tonali, for example, Tonali wouldn't have signed under Thomas Frank, Igor Tudor or any other manager. I think De Zerbi had a big pull in this signing, which is a major one for the football club. So I think we are all incredibly excited now. And Spurs fans at the end of last season, I walked away from that stadium thinking, what are we going to be doing for next season? What are we going to be doing, showing ambition, etc. But now we all can't wait for the season to start. 9 days' time, we play MK Dons in a pre-season friendly behind closed doors. Spurs fans can't wait for the pre-season to start. We can't wait for the season to start. We all feel very, very excited, and that's how we should be feeling.
The reason I think that the De Zerbi appointment is different to a whole host of Man United appointments or Chelsea appointments.
Ten Hag and Amorim, and the reason I highlight that one is I looked at someone like Rasmus Højlund this year, who was hailed as being a Ten Hag guy and perfect for Man United, and he's now left for half of what they paid for him. 3 years later. Those are the kind of things things I was flagging.
But what's different about the De Zerbi appointment, though, is he speaks the language that the Spurs as a club haven't been speaking for so long. Like you referenced the sort of "we need to stop crying about it" line from De Zerbi. He's dragging the club up by its own bootstraps, and he's got a vision for Spurs that the fans share, but that the people that are running the club haven't acted on or have said they've got, but in reality they haven't. And so I think he's exactly what Spurs need. And I think it's a very realistic possibility that Spurs finish in those Champions League places, despite having back-to-back 17th places and facing existential crisis for the last 2 seasons. And that's what I like about De Zerbi. Obviously, I'm not a Spurs fan, but I think he's exactly the antidote that the club need to the limp-wristed approach that they've demonstrated recently.
I like you, Max. You're always very nice about Tottenham. You're always very nice about Tottenham.
Chris, you said that to me before. What is this? What is this favouritism nonsense? Oh, you're like whoever says something nice about you. Is that how it is? Disgusting.
Well, no. This is a time to be positive about the football club. You know, many people have slated the football club over the last couple of years. This should be, and hopefully is, a very, very positive time. We cannot, like I said before, we cannot go down the route like we did last season, and this season coming up must be very, very different. In terms of ambition, in terms of signings, in terms of backing the manager, etc. But all I can see is positive signs that the football club are changing. And I cannot say that enough. This has been going on for many, many years. Many Spurs fans have been calling for some kind of change in a positive way. And we have seen that in abundance in these last couple of months. To be sitting here talking about 6 signings early July, which most of them were done in June, is just unheard of. And the fact that we can go out and spend more money, I do think there is a lot more work to do, in my opinion, because we do need to sign a centre forward. We do need to replace Heung-min Son on that left-hand side. But if we can sort that forward line out, going into next season, I will be incredibly excited and optimistic of what we can achieve.
It's all right, Chris. Max and me like you too, even if you won't pick a favourite. The wonderful Chris Cowlin joining us. Brilliant stuff. Check out the wonderful work he does across social media and as a great Spurs reporter. I want to talk some transfers with you as well, Max, but as is the way, we've maybe waffled a little bit today. So we're going to take a break. We'll be back. We're going to speak to Nate Bukayo up next, and we'll get some of that talking. Don't you worry. Still plenty of show to come here on the S Word, sponsored by Cowlin.
Big name reaction from both sides of the pond.
The S Word
from talkSPORT. cuss words here. Just 2 hours of full-on football dialogue.
Every day,
talkSPORT presents
the S word.
We do what's advertised, 2 hours of full-on football dialogue, and that's what we've been having today. So, love to hear from you. Get involved in the chat. We're aware that there were a couple of issues earlier on with people getting access from the States, and we've changed the settings, we played around, so you should be able to now get in there and get in the chat and get involved. So we'll go through some of those in a short while. The brilliant Max Scott is alongside myself.
Hello.
Bang average Will Gavin, live from London. I'm all right.
You said it, not me.
I'm happy to be average.
You said it.
That's fine. I spent a lot of my life being only above average in a certain area, and you know,
not anymore though, mate.
Hey, it's on the way. It's on the way.
Days.
This got weird immediately, didn't it? Like, this is what used to happen on overnights when I just talked to myself for like 6 hours. I don't know what you've brought out of me, but something has got weird very quickly. Still to come on the show, Ben Jacobs is going to be joining us to talk about the latest transfer news. But with only 3 games left of this World Cup, what has it meant for soccer in the United States? Has it been a success?
USA chance intensified.
On defender and puts it top corner. What a finish that is for Laura Balogun with his second of the game.
The full-time whistle goes and the USA as co-hosts are through to the knockout stages. Chance for Tillman, tries to find Balogun, he gets it, Balogun scores! Well, here we go. Is red card. Wow! Following Balogun, the goal-scoring hero, sees red. Maurizio Pochettino said that the media in America hadn't given his side credit. Well, they'll be giving them credit now because the United States of America are through to the last 16 of the World Cup.
Flo Balogun is now eligible to play in the round of 16 game against Belgium.
Trump today confirmed that he'd made a call to Gianni Infantino and lobbied him.
On the outside, left-footed cross to the far post and headed in by Charlotte Keita-Lara. He's Lukaku winning it in the penalty area. USA again coughing up possession. It's the end of the American dream. The co-hosts are out. USA 1, Belgium 4. I think a mild success, I would say.
Listen, round of 16 for the USA is probably around about where they are as a footballing nation right now. Like, getting the first knockout win since 2002, I think, is a success for them. And it's certainly what we talked about going into the tournament. But there was some huge disappointment about how they went out to Belgium. Some huge disappointment about the nature of the defeat and the fact that it came off the back of the Flo Balogun story. But
they made a rod for their own back. And anybody celebrating it.
Players didn't make a rod for their own.
No, but you know, a whole bunch of the nation who celebrated political intervention because that's what anybody would do, any world leader would do, is a load of garbage, and they've got egg on their face, and deservedly so.
I am in agreement with that, and what I will say is, and I've said this on air plenty of times, I had huge disappointment in a number of journalists out there who have spent years going after a Qatar World Cup, going after a Russia World Cup. You know, this is the nation who in 2015 were actually the ones who went out and prosecuted a bunch of members of FIFA for corruption. You know, this is a nation who were against FIFA for so very long. And the number of people who very quickly said, yeah, but the right decision was made. So the process isn't great, but we're okay with the decision that was made. Yeah, I agree with you on that. Rank. But it also hurt a huge number of the players. It also hurt a huge number of the fans.
Yeah, Flo Balogun, by the way.
Proper soccer
becoming the central character in a political sporting scandal is a crying shame.
Who could he have nothing to do? More grace.
Yeah, no,
couldn't
absolutely.
Have been more grace.
That's another sad thing. You know, what in doing what they did, that it just served to disrupt what was at the time a great run in the World Cup for them. But let's be honest, all of the co-hosts reached their absolute ceiling in this. Let's be honest.
Ooh, I think Mexico could have an argument that they are quarter-final worthy. I think that's...
they're not, because they came up against a far superior side.
The might of England. Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about whether the World Cup has been a success in the US outside of the USMNT. And maybe you can't take those two things separately, but what has it done for soccer in America with 3 games left? I'm delighted to say that friend of the show, the great Nate Bucati, joins us live from Kansas City. Nate, how are you, brother? I'm going to keep doing the clapping. Even if you're not going to play the sound effects, even if Max isn't going to join in, I'm going to clap for him because he's brilliant. Nate, how are you, brother?
Well, first of all, Will, I'm not really happy with your own self-deprecation to start the segment off here, because you guys are in the semifinals. I need a little more positive self-talk all the way around. I'm gonna give you a motivational speech later for that.
I can be self-deprecating about myself while telling you it's coming home. It's fine.
There we go.
We are going to be. Don't get me wrong. A final is a final. France are brilliant. Spain have got a wonderful squad. We're beating Argentina on Wednesday. I truly believe that.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident of that as well, Nate. Yeah. I'm pretty confident.
I told you last time, Will, when you were worried about going to the Azteca, the whole metaphor of slaying the dragon, you had to go into the dungeon, you had to, suffer peril. That's how a heroic story is written. I'm realizing now you're also exorcising demons from the Azteca. Yeah. Now, from the hand of God, it's going to be the head of Harry or the boot of Bellingham. I'm not going to say what body part Declan would have scored with, but somebody's going to do it for you guys, and it's coming home. See how I changed the subject?
Yeah, you did. You really did. Listen, we can talk about the political engagement and the USMNT side of things, but just from your perspective, the kind of casual fan, I found myself from doing the show very much on the US soccer side of Instagram and TikTok and these kind of places where the algorithm starts to dictate that, from following greats like yourself and from the videos that we've put out. And I've seen a lot of people who seem to be engaging in football for the first time. And that, what level that is, it could be that they just love Erling Haaland and want to get involved in this absolute superstar. And it could be that they've genuinely loved watching all 101 games, 104 games it will eventually be. Do you think that this has done what it was intended to in terms of engaging American sports fans in the sport of soccer?
Absolutely. Now, how many people of those that took interest will stick around, right, for the next 4 years until the World Cup comes around? That's a different question. And that's always the story in the United States. Listen, guys, I've been described by many of my friends as a born-again soccer fan because I was a casual observer of the game who enjoyed it. And in 2006, it was the World Cup that hooked me. And it's been my biggest passion in life outside of my family ever since. And there are thousands and thousands of Americans who have some sort of origin story that dates back to a World Cup in which they caught the bug. And they started following the game on a club level and on a day-to-day level. There's going to be even more of those now. No doubt about it. But there will certainly be millions of Americans who said, that was fun. I rooted for my country. Tell me when the World Cup comes back around again. That's just kind of the nature of the United States. So I don't want to overstate it and say all of a sudden soccer is going to become the number one passion in this country like it is everywhere else in the world. But certainly I think it will take a big step forward.
If the World Cup is seen as a catalyst for, improving the sort of the support within the game in the USA, is it fair to say that grassroots football or access to grassroots football is preventing that growth from really happening? Because it seems to me that it's quite an expensive hobby for kids over there to achieve, whereas it's largely free or very inexpensive for kids in Europe to play the game. Do you know what I mean? If you've got these two opposing forces, the World Cup is dragging football to a greater height in the USA, but actual playing the game itself isn't.
Certainly it's a challenge in the United States. And how they say your biggest strength is your biggest weakness. This is a country that's been obsessed with capitalism since the outset, and it's driven innovation and competition and all those things. And I don't need to tell you guys the downsides. It also suffers, right? This is youth sports is an industrial complex in the United States. And it's not just soccer anymore. It's almost every sport is more about maximizing profits for the organizations that put on youth sports than it is for maximizing the outcome of developing young kids who play. But I would also say this, and look, the Kansas City Current, I live in Kansas City, the most pioneering women's soccer organization in the world. They just this weekend launched a free-to-play system for kids in Kansas City in one of the urban core neighborhoods that's economically depressed. And I will say this too, the academies in Major League Soccer do not cost money when the players are good enough. Now, the transition of getting a young player who wants to play a lot of soccer to the point where they're good enough to make an academy, there's still a gap there, right? And that's a challenge that certainly needs to be. But I would say this as well. If you go to most, blue collar to lower middle class neighborhoods in the world, when you look outside, you see kids everywhere playing soccer that's unsupervised. And You don't see that as much in the United States. It's been a game of basketball and things like that. And I think the more that kids that live in those neighborhoods play soccer on their own, that also makes a massive difference.
Do you think that that this World Cup is going to shift any of that? I mean, that's fascinating to know about the fact that academies are free, yet playing for a normal team on a Saturday or a Sunday isn't. Do you think that will change because of the World Cup? Are you seeing any encouraging signs around that?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly conversation about it everywhere, and I guess that's where everything needs to start, you know, and you have to remember, too, that we are infants in the game of soccer. Major League Soccer started in 1996 and was going to fold in 2001 if not kept alive by two owners that basically bought the entire league. Now the league's got 30 teams. The academies are all relatively young, and if you look at some of the players, I know we're going to get to the future in a little bit, but if you look at the New York Red Bulls, two of their best players are an 18-year-old and a 17-year-old right now who will be playing in Europe here before we know it. Real Salt Lake has a player in Xavier Gozo who's, I think, 19 years old right now and certainly ticketed for Europe. There are more and more players coming through the academy systems that didn't even exist this time maybe 10 years ago across the league. So there is progress being made, and that's what's disappointing about the result. Because it confirms to everybody against Belgium that, this team, they lost to Belgium in 2014. They haven't made any progress. And that's what's disappointing about that result and performance.
Moving kind of away from the youth perspective, but back to that kind of idea of the growth. And it's a fascinating topic of conversation and something we could probably do an hour on its own, let's be honest. Yeah. But when you want to keep those casual fans, and part of it is definitely going to be about participation, but the MLS and the US Soccer Federation, who, by the way, when I was just looking that up, it comes up as a non-profit organisation, which is frankly laughable. Wow. But the US Soccer Federation and MLS have talked about the MLS becoming a top 5 league in the world. Do you think that's possible unless they move to adopting a European model, unless they move away from salary caps and a capping of international players and everything else that goes along with what makes MLS unique, but also potentially stops the top-tier talent from coming?
Yeah, you've just touched on the existential crisis that exists in Major League Soccer right now. Because, listen, if it wasn't for the kind of the National Football League model that MLS adopted, and that was because of Lamar Hunt, who really brought that to the AFL and then the NFL. The league had to look out for each other because, as I mentioned, they were filing for bankruptcy about 20 years ago, and they had to keep each other afloat. So there is a strong push by the original owners to continue a model that ensures the success and competitive balance that teams, even in the small markets, have a chance to win. I will tell you guys, one of the things that I do think is actually incredibly disappointing about European soccer is that most of the leagues seem like a foregone conclusion before they even kick a ball off. And where's the excitement in that? I'd say the Premier League is one of the few examples where it's not the case, but still, you kind of know your lot, what you're really competing for as a team on an annual basis. If you're a Crystal Palace fan, you don't dream of winning the Premier League. You dream of maybe getting into Europe and then selling your best players to one of the best teams and trying to fund your program that way. And I think there is a legitimate reason to not want to have that for your fan base. But can you become a top 5 league when you're restricting payment for a salary and budget and things like that? Probably not. If they do, they're going to have to drastically expand how much money they spend. And the new owners in Major League Soccer, the Jorge Masas of the world, they want to do that. So I think it's, in America, it's about trying to find that balance between keeping some level of competitive balance for all of the teams, but also allowing them to go out and because you can't compete with you're already fighting the battle of the fact that all the best leagues are in Europe right now, in addition to the fact that you can't pay as much money as they do. So that's a double whammy. But the league's grown a lot, and it's become, you look at the valuations of the teams in Major League Soccer, outside of those top 5 leagues in Europe, they're going toe-to-toe with many of the leagues in Europe.
Anything else from you, Max?
Well, for me, the big thing is just around there being a pyramid and there being promotion and relegation. And I take your point about the financial viability of moving straight to a European model. But I just think in terms of the respect that the MLS would garner around the world if it moved to that, I think naturally more people would be inclined to watch it. The idea that Lionel Messi could get relegated, for example, not that that's going to happen because, Inter are performing far better than a lot of other teams. It just feels like that's always going to be a stick to beat the MLS with.
And the problem is, and Nate can answer this better than I can, but it's turkeys voting for Christmas, right? The reason the NFL owners are so successful, forget the NFL beyond it, is because you see a franchise that sold for, hundreds of millions 30 years ago is now selling for $9 billion. Now we're at this age, and the growth is only ever exponential when you have the guaranteed income. Imagine you could say you're guaranteed to be in the Champions League every single season. That's why they wanted the Super League, right? Yeah. So can you ever imagine a world where, like I say, the turkeys vote for Christmas, where relegation and promotion ever came in?
It comes up sometimes, guys, but no, and especially when you talk about the valuations of the teams, and that's one of the reasons there is a conversation between the owners, because the owners that started the league bought in at a price point that was, pennies compared to what the teams are selling for now. The team in Kansas City just sold for a valuation of $700 million. Wow. That's in Kansas City. That's market 33 in the United States. So the new owners that are buying into the league have a lot more money. They want to spend more money, but they also don't want to take a $700 million investment and subject it to the possibility of going out of business, And I think that there's pushback from some people that say, look, is it really so dramatic to see yo-yo teams that go up to the Premier League for 1 year, can't compete because economically they don't have the footing and go right back down the next? I know we had a little bit better drama this year at the bottom of the Premier League table. So, but you're right. I mean, the owners have to vote on it. And I'm kind of trying to figure out why they would.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough, mate.
Nate, producer Sam told me the reason I asked Max if he had anything more, it was just because I've been told I need to tee you up for something. I've been told you've got a little rallying cry for us.
Listen, guys, when you say it's coming home, I'm sitting here in the home of the Prairie Village Three Lions in Kansas. Will, I'm obsessed with your team right now. And I told you this back when we discussed the concept of fear. This is an England team that could very well be ticketed for destiny. They've already shown that they have what it takes. They have the mettle. When their backs are against the wall, Harry Kane will step up and score 2 goals when you need it. When some people out there were claiming that Jude Bellingham shouldn't even have been on the roster, he goes out and drags it across the finish line, not once, but twice. You're facing the demons of your past. And nobody should have to carry that burden, but these players have shown that they're up for that burden.
Yes, they are.
They stared down the Azteca, down a man. Dan Burns smashing headers left and right.
Get up, Dan Burns.
They walked through the fires of the Azteca, and they won. They stared down the Norwegians and Erling Haaland, and maybe there was a cable involved, but we're not worried about that. I'm not sure there was, by the way. And now, the opportunity. I stood there in Kansas City Stadium and I listened to the Argentinians singing a song that says, "El que no salta es un inglés." If you're not jumping, you're English. They're obsessed with the English even when they're playing Switzerland. But this is your opportunity. This is your time, England. Don't be afraid of the moment. And those Three Lions are not afraid of the moment. It's coming home, fellas.
That's my first round of applause on the S word ever.
Despite this show being an American show, Max completely refuses to buy into any of it. You got him
Max,
to buy in, Nate. You got him to buy in.
And maybe I've softened Max up enough to let him know that one man doesn't speak for all of us in this country.
Oh, I know.
Many of us have tried to put our best foot forward. We got to own our totality as a country, just like everybody does. But we have done our best to put our best foot forward and welcome the world and show the other side of this country. And I hope people have seen it. And I do hope people have seen that we've grown as a soccering country and that we have a culture here too. And we want to be a part of the global landscape of it. And the calendar is switching in Major League Soccer as well to the international calendar. They should have done it sooner, but at least we're getting it done. So welcome us in, Max.
Oh, no, I
love that the music has continued under this while we got back into it.
I just want this music anytime you have me on.
Yeah.
Just
20 minutes of it.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with anything you just said there, by the way, Nate. I just feel particularly passionate about the interference that we've seen and, the disgrace that the administration has been during this World Cup. But I know that isn't reflective of, the vast majority of soccer supporting fans. So, yeah, don't get it twisted. I feel the love.
We love you, Nate Bucati. Wonderful stuff. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you so much for rooting so hard for England at a time where, let's be honest, to much of the world we're the villains.
Yeah.
It's honestly, this semi-final is, as we said the other day, it's heel versus heel. It is bad guy versus bad guy. Yeah. It is hate watch versus hate watch. And yet, somehow, we are getting some people on our side.
What a speech that was.
It's wonderful.
That was
hear.
Proper. Fair play, Nate.
I love it as well. Can we stop the music, please? I need it because we've got several coming up. But I just wanted to address one thing that Nate said, which is totally the speech and everything was brilliant, but it really just hit me from a personal perspective. Is this idea, and it's why sometimes I really feel for Americans in general when it comes to this sport, because he talks about this idea that he fell in love with the World Cup in 2006, and he sometimes gets called what did he say?
Was it a convert or
like a newborn?
That's
and that's sometimes how he gets mocked and treated. And what I will say for Americans is, that's how I came to the NFL, and that's obviously my bread and butter during the NFL season, and how I've had so much success over the last couple of years. The Americans have never done anything but welcome me in with an open heart and been so wonderful and been so brilliant to me. And they love the English getting involved, and they love the growth of their sport internationally for the most part, even though it has meant losing home games and everything else. And we can be so snobby about Americans talking about football.
Definitely.
We can be so harsh to them when a lot of them are proper ball knowers, and a lot of them really do know what they're talking about. And Nate is a prime example of that. And I'm being told in my ear I have to break, even though, I'm trying to talk about some soulful things here. Leave me alone, Sam. Get out of my ear. We've got another guest coming, that's why. All right, let's move to a break here on the S Word, sponsored by Cowlin, and then Ben Jacobs will be here.
From the touchline to the terraces,
talkSPORT presents
the S Word.
of football in North America. And I mean the proper kind, where you only use your feet.
The S Word
from talkSPORT.
You're back with the S Word, sponsored by Cowlin. We're just having a chat. We're just having a good time. Sorry if you're watching on the stream. Thank you so much who people have joined in today. Like I said, we had some real issues with the stream early doors, but lots of you now getting in touch. And it seems like the majority, when it comes to the expansion of the World Cup, sitting very much on your side of the fence here.
Welcome.
Emperoki says 64, way too much. Channel TRH says it's simple, really. More teams, more games, more money. Plus, if you make everything 4 quarters, that's just another 24 games of more ads. Yeah. So there you go. If Master was here, he'd ask you all to throw your 4s up. I will not do it. Happy birthday to Master, by the way. It's Master's birthday, which is why he's not here today.
Mate.
I didn't do that.
Soccer match in the 4th quarter.
Yes. Yeah, that's the most apt thing you could have played for us saying happy birthday to Master. It's genuinely terrible we didn't do that at the start of the show, but then the stream wasn't working, so you wouldn't have heard it. And loads more. Like we'll get into more of the chat as the show goes on. Well, we won't today, but we've got loads more shows to go right up until next Monday as we react to the World Cup final. But we did do a little bit of transfers earlier with Spurs, and now we've got one of our top football correspondents out in the States. The brilliant Ben Jacobs is joining the show. Ben, how are you, sir? I'm not going to.
How are you? And happy birthday to Master. 21.
Yeah. That's too kind. That is far too kind. Look, I want to start off talking about the Manchester United midfield, Ben, because, I mean, you like the Andre Santos signing, right?
Yeah, I mean, you'll have seen this, Ben. There's a lot of Man United fans sort of turning their noses up at Andre Santos, and I just think he's a player of absolutely top pedigree. He, weirdly enough, he came on loan to Forest from Chelsea, and Steve Cooper wasn't having him.
That's why you like
it.
Right,
but he hardly played, and Steve Cooper didn't like it, and, you know, it wouldn't be the first time that a player has been signed at the football club without the express consent of the manager, but that's a separate point. That's for a different time. Look, I think that we're talking about a player that is technically incredibly gifted, and he's been playing at a football club in Chelsea who haven't known their right leg from their fridge. So I just kind of think that He's gone under the radar. He's gone under the radar and has what it takes to perform, and that is why Manchester United are maybe taking a calculated risk. But I think, Ben, they can be quite confident that they are getting a player that could well perform right at the very top level.
Yeah, there's 3 perspectives here. Brazilian journalists that I spoke to, and sources as well, by the way, at the World Cup, who said that they feel this is a player who will fill the shoes for many years to come in the number 6 role, effectively replacing Casemiro. Then you have the Man United fans who are somewhat underwhelmed, maybe less so now they're aware that Yuri Tielemans is also joining, and another midfielder very possibly as well. But part of the backlash when it was officially confirmed, and also when the fee and the agreement was in place, £48 million, £2 million in add-ons, is down to the fact that Manchester United had Elliot Anderson as top target. He went to Manchester City. Then they tried for Mateus Fernandes. He went to Tottenham Hotspur. They looked at Sandro Tonali but were put off the cost, and then Tottenham are happy to pay a total package of £100 million. So it's felt like Manchester United are looking for something more economical in the market, and then having been promised effectively, at least via the media in terms of reports and marquee signing, Andre Santos arrives, and Manchester United fans don't feel that's the calibre of player that's necessary for this midfield revamp. And yet the third perspective is Chelsea fans, a lot of whom are disappointed to see him go. Yeah. And the point with Santos is he's not just a defined, rigid number 6. He's somebody that's capable of goals. At Strasbourg, he was utilised more as an 8 and even a 10, and he proved that he could score a rocket from outside of the area. If you then add Tielemans as well, suddenly Manchester United have got deeper lying midfielders who can actually provide goal contributions, which is what Casemiro did last season. So Man United are going to feel really pleased now that they've got 2 midfielders through the door, both of whom are deeper, but also capable of goal contributions. And in each case, it's also worth pointing out, this is not a panic buy. Man United were looking at Tielemans when he was still at Monaco, and Andre Santos was a player that Chelsea and Manchester United discussed when Alejandro Garnacho moved to Chelsea. Wow. And that was a year ago, and yet at that stage the player wasn't for sale. And as soon as it changed, Manchester United didn't hesitate.
For me, the reason that I do sympathise with Man United fans, as much as I think André Santos is potentially a very good footballer, it's that potential, right? Yuri Tielemans, again, very good footballer. They're talking about Ederson as well. I don't know if that's now completely off the table. I know it was at one point going to happen and then not. But because they've been linked with those players and because they are now a team back in the Champions League and because they think they can push on with the performances of Michael Carrick in the last 6 months to challenging back at the top of the Premier League as well, I understand the fans feeling a little underwhelmed that they're like, this is our chance. We have sat in the doldrums for 10 years, having been so dominant in football for so long, and now we have to sit here and watch Tottenham buy all the players that we wanted, and we have to sit here and watch, all these big names that we're not quite willing to reach and do. And I understand if a Man United fan feels that Sandro Tonali or Bruno Guimaraes, whoever that might be, is more valuable to them than signing 2 squad players.
Yeah, I also think, though, there's just an element of optics in all of this, right? And Chelsea fans weren't that excited by Garnacho. Why? Because Man United didn't want him, and vice versa. And there's always an element of that. Arsenal signing Noni Madueke, who I think has done okay since joining Arsenal. But again, Chelsea don't want him. So how excited should Arsenal fans be? If we were talking about the same player, unknown, arriving from Brazil, top talent, the next Casemiro, then everyone would be really excited about it. So it's a combination, as you say, of 2 things out of Man United's control. One, that they've signed him from a Premier League rival who have decided he's falling lower on their pecking order, so are suddenly prepared to sanction a sale. And then the second point is what all the other rivals are doing. And you're absolutely right to raise that. Tottenham are going crazy in the market because they've got a new philosophy. They're trying to change the culture. They've not got European football, but the domestic financial rules are changing and Spurs have got more rope to work with. So they are prepared to overpay. And with Manchester United, it's a case of cumulative business, needing 3 midfielders, you could argue, especially with Manuel Ugarte injured. Add to that mix that they might need to strengthen on left wing. They definitely need to look at a left fullback. They've had to add a goalkeeper because of the fact that Onana's gone back on loan and Bayindir is expected to leave. Yep, free transfer, but still wage space and all of that. They might want to revisit the centre-back situation. They could even look for an experienced forward. So when everything is added up, Manchester United, even with Champions League football, do have to be a little bit conscious in terms of the finances. And the fact that they've been able to get Yuri Tielemans on a bargain, a £35 million release clause, coupled with the fact that even though Santos is a big fee for his profile, it's not as high as the Fernandes or Tonali ones, there will be more money to spend. And I think Manchester United's window is only starting to heat up.
I tell you what, I love you when you come on, Ben. You're so accurate and you got so much great knowledge. What I also love is that we're in a breaking news WhatsApp group. We're all in there. We all see, let's be honest, Ben and Alex Crook do a huge amount of heavy lifting. Max Scott as well, I'll say, does some good heavy lifting in there as well. I love that whilst on with us, Ben has also confirmed in the group that there is a verbal agreement in place between Villa and PSG for Luca Digne, whilst also talking to us. It's sensational work from me. I'd never have guessed it if I didn't have the group open in front of me. How much should Villa be concerned with Tielemans going, with Digne going? This is a team who've just had European success, who are in the top 3 in the league, and yet seems like they have to sell in order to advance.
Yeah, they need sales. It's unfortunate because they have to get through the last bit of PSR. We don't know exactly when they're going to close their financial year because regardless of the date, it can be May or June or July. So this 30th of June date is a little bit of a myth. But you also get a kind of near-miss period where if you show a transfer was basically worked on and agreed in principle, but it's done later than your deadline, you can still declare it on the previous financial year. And as a consequence, we'll have to understand, probably in March next year, when we see everyone's books, how much of a fire sale this is as far as Aston Villa are concerned. And, you could argue the upside is that by allowing these release clauses and players to go for lower numbers, it's still money in. So it's under £10 million for Luca Digne and a verbal agreement to join PSG. It's £35 million for Yuri Tielemans' release clause to join Manchester United. And that kind of money might suddenly put Villa in a stronger position if they want to try and fight and keep Morgan Rogers or raise that asking price in the inflated market. So if Morgan Rogers goes now, my expectation, looking for more positives for Villa, are that they will take some of that money, if not the bulk of that money, and be able to invest it in the market. And it's the same for Newcastle United as well. If Bruno Guimaraes departs, or regardless, because they've got Tonali plus Anthony Gordon money, there will be a situation where what Newcastle bring in isn't only about book balancing, it's also about creating squad budget to reinvest in the market. And in the case of Aston Villa, in the same breath as speaking about exits, we should point out the fact that they've won a race against Newcastle United. Yohan Manzambi is going to be coming in, an excellent central midfielder, roughly 60 million euros or 52 million pounds, and there's agreement in principle there. So Villa aren't just selling, they're signing as well, and it's going to be a busy summer, I suspect, as they do also look to equip Unai Emery with depth and the ability to challenge in the Champions League. But I'll sort of say one more thing. Villa are unfortunate in the sense that the ambition and the on-field achievement will eventually be caught up with the revenue, but overnight it's not going to match even somebody like Tottenham Hotspur that have kept their wage bill low and always had extremely high revenue because of their brand and their stadium. So sometimes when you achieve on the field too quickly, as has proven to be the case with Aston Villa, of course it should be celebrated, but you have to wait for your brand and your infrastructure and ultimately your finances to catch up. And even with Champions League money, Villa still have to abide by that last cycle of PSR. And even with Champions League money, they have to abide by 70% of total revenue on transfers under financial fair play, whereas Tottenham haven't got financial fair play to contend with heading into the next cycle. And as a result, under the new rules, they can spend 85% of their total revenue on transfers, but it's a transitional year. And that's a really key point, because in the first year, there's no real punishment if you exceed that 85% number by 30%. So you're actually looking at a scenario where Villa celebrate Champions League football, but the number is 70%. Tottenham don't have any European football, and the number's 115%. And that's the sort of discrepancy. And remember, the revenue's not equal either. Tottenham's is higher, and this in part at least explains why Spurs are spending big and Villa are conscious of their finances.
If we get Gabby Ogbonhall that explanation at any point, that would be wonderful. Ben Jacobs, thank you very much. Wonderful stuff from you. Thank you so much for joining us. Brilliant as always. I wanted to get Max's say on this as well. We've run out of time, but I will tell you, go to Max Scott's Instagram page, Max Scott TS, because he's done a brilliant video about this and it's well worth checking out. So go and do that. In the meantime, thank you for joining us on the show today. You've been wonderful.
Pleasure.
Hopefully we get to do it again before the end of this run. In the meantime, tomorrow, France v Spain. Wednesday, England, Argentina. We'll build up to all of it from 8 a.m. Eastern tomorrow, live here on the S Word, sponsored by Calci.
The S Word with Will Gavin and Master Tesfacion
from talkSPORT.